Hello and welcome to Spirit Sherpa, the show that helps and encourages you on your journey to unlock your magic mojo. I'm Joshua Radewan, here with transformational coach and spiritual guru and transformational shaman, Kelle Sparta.
I can't remember.
You're going to get a new title every week now. Let's just rock it. Once you become nothing, you become one with everything, then you can become anything. So you're all of those things.
I am all. Yes.
You are the I am.
I am the I am. Yeah, that's that. Did you ever see that movie?
I have not.
Oh, there's a movie called I Am that premiered in Boston. And it's a spiritual movie. It's all about, how we see ourselves and how we see the world and the collaborative nature of humanity. And it's actually quite good. It was by the guy who worked with Jim Carrey on one of his movies. I can't remember. It was a long time ago. It was like 10 years ago. Well, maybe longer. Oh, I'm old. Okay. Yes. But yeah, they premiered it in Boston, and I went to the premiere and got to meet the guy who was the director. And they're all living together in this little commune on the shores of someplace in California that's expensive, but they're in mobile homes, and they're all living in very small space, even though they've got big bucks because they want to spend their big bucks on good things, right? And so I was like, that's awesome. So anyway.
Cool.
The today, we were talking, we just came out of, so we record multiple episodes at the same time, right? So we just finished the walkabout episode you guys heard last week, right? And so today we're gonna, today, this time, we're still in the same day. That's why I look exactly the same with the same clothes and everything.
It's the eternal moment of now. This is not the time you are looking for.
Yeah, the time. That's hysterical. But Josh and I had intended the last episode to be about meditation. And then we were going to do this episode about meditation. And I was like, I really want to talk about the nature of the universe. And he's like, well, let's just do that now. So the next one may be about meditation. It may not. We'll see what happens when we get to the end of this one. But, so I wanted to talk about the nature of the universe because, I've seen some really interesting things recently in the news, and there's a new theory that is trying to disprove the Big Bang theory. And what they're saying is that we are actually in a black hole, and that's why we can't see past the edges of the universe. And I was like, our entire universe is inside a black hole. Isn't that an interesting concept? I kind of love that idea because evidently when you look at the quantum level, if you compress it down, because that's what a black hole does, is that it's ultimately compressed, right? And it can only compress so far before it bounces back. And so it compresses to get through the black hole and then it explodes back out again. And that's what our universe is, according to this new theory, which I thought, we are compressed and exploded. I feel the truth of compressed and exploded. Do you feel that, Josh?
Well, you were talking about something in one of our groups the other day about the miracle of us even being conscious with all of the different particles and everything, like the space between them, how we can even experience this. So when you were saying that, I was just feeling like, yeah, it gets dense around here sometimes, like that compression. And like to be in this vessel like this, shit, like I got to say, like the science behind this isn't necessarily my thing. I've always tried to stick away from it because I always felt science stopped my magic because then I'm bound by certain rules and ways of being. It could just be I'm a lazy researcher too. And I'm like, where do you turn? It's the reason I do the work I do with you is because it shows me a path. Like that is just such a wide, expansive place to look and to gather from. But, like that felt interesting when you said that. Like that felt interesting. And I've been seeing a lot of black hole symbolism.
Yeah. Well, and the Big Bang never really resonated with me.
Yeah.
And it's like something out of nothing. No, I don't buy that. Right? It just doesn't fit for me. But the thing that I was talking is so funny to me when people say back to me what I said to them because sometimes I don't recognize I'm like, I said, what? So, and when you started saying that, I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. What did I say? So I'm trying to remember exactly what it is like, but the idea being that we are all, there is this okay, how do I say this? Okay. If you look at, and this is why I like looking at physics, I like looking at quantum physics specifically, because that's when all the rules are different than regular physics. And I disbelieved regular physics for a very long time. It was actually an issue in my divorce. Okay. When my husband tried to keep me, and he's like, "Well, I'll go to therapy." I'd been begging for 4 years for him to go to therapy, and he refused. And then finally, he'd go to therapy when I said I wanted out. And I'm like, "No, too little, too late," right? But I looked at him and I said, "We're inherently incompatible." I said, he's like, "I can support you." And I was at the time, I was like, "I'm going to be a high priestess," right? And he's like, "I can support you in that." I said, "You think it's crap. You're an atheist, and you think it's crap." I said, "I'm going to put this in words you could understand. Let's assume you're a physicist," because he was a chemical engineer, an oceanographic engineer, a nuclear engineer, right? And I said, "Let's assume you're a physicist, and I think physics is complete crap," which, by the way, I do. I said, "But I can support you in being the best physicist ever, honey." And he's like, "Yeah, okay, I see your point." And so, because he not only thought it was a contempt issue, right? Contempt is one of the four horsemen of the apocalypse in a marriage, according to John Gottman. And if you ever want to read a good book about your relationship, The Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse for Marriage by John, good book. Anyway, so back to the nature of the universe, right? So what I was saying was that, I look at the quantum physics level because at the quantum level, things operate differently. Electrons can teleport across the universe. They just disappear, wink out of existence and wink back into existence, and yet still stay entangled quantumly with another electron on the opposite side of the universe. So what happens to one happens to the other, right? It's wild and cool, and it smacks of magic, right? And so, this is why I like quantum physics. But the when I was talking to you guys, what I was saying is that we are made up of magic, right? We forget that. We think we're physical beings, but we aren't. We're made up of magic, right? We are those electrons and those neutrons and those protons and those atoms. We are all of it. And we are none of it at the same time, right? Because the vast majority of us is empty space. And that's been proven through quantum physics, right? Through physics in general. But and so, the table, knocking on the table. Well, sorry, dogs. I freaked out my dogs. But, and knocking on the table, that feels solid. It isn't, right? It's an illusion, just like everything else. And I was talking to Kathy yesterday, and we were discussing the nature of the universe and um, this idea that we are. Wow, it just went away. The entire conversation that I had with her just went away. I had it and then it was gone. So clearly not meant to talk about that. So we are made up of magic because we are empty space, right? We are empty space and we are atoms, and everything in between is our intention that holds us together, right? It is our beingness, our intention and our beingness and our souls that hold us together. And our souls are just energy fields. Okay. They're energy fields that have mass. They've actually proven that you lose mass when you die, which means that the soul is a substantive thing, right? It's a very small substantive thing on the physical realm, but it's a very big substantive thing in our experience. And so when we are made of magic and we are living in the eternal moment of now, in the illusion of time space, when we can unleash ourselves, when we can unleash our brains from the illusion of time space and the illusion of physical reality, we are infinitely creative and powerful to create our own realities, right? And, the the thing that we have to grasp, and this is the conversation I was having with Kathy, is she was talking about the difference between Eastern religion and Western religion. And the idea that in Eastern religion, you're releasing and stripping away everything until you become one with everything, right? And the idea is to dissolve into the union space, that you cease to exist into the union space. And in Western religion, it's about mastering the self and connecting into the divine and then being able to direct the divine. And that it's a very different way of being, because in the Western world we like our control, right? Um, and the idea is to become the divine, but consciously, as opposed to dissolve into the divine in the Eastern cultures, right? Which is the standard duality, right? Masculine, feminine being the states and the duality of all that is, right? But when we talk about the nature of reality, we are looking at this. We're looking at not just the physical world and not just the energetic world, but we're also talking about the astral. We're also talking about other dimensional spaces and other layers of space. So there's dimensions and then there's layers, right? So there's lower astral and upper astral and layers of the energy in between. And, when I think about, years ago, I claimed the title of shaman because I am a shaman. I was recognized as a shaman and so on. But shamanism has become sort of connected to plant medicine these days, and I don't like that association. So yeah, you're hearing me call myself a spiritual coach, right? I let go of spirit doctor because people keep thinking I'm a medical doctor. I'm like, look, right? You get, but no. So, whatever. So, but I've been thinking about it, what I really do, and I really am an elf, right? I'm not going to change my title again. Spiritual coach is fine, but I really do work with people on alchemizing themselves, right? And it is in alchemy, there is a level known as the archaeus. And you can look it up. There's a bunch of different ways to spell it. I'm not going to spell it. Like, too many ways to spell it. But the archaeus is the liminal space between physical reality and the energetic world. And so it's a place between where intention comes into form, right? And so I operated the archaeus, right? And, the challenge with being attached to physics, when you do this work, you really do have to unattach from physics, because you're like, well, where does that fit here? And how does that go there? And why are these different structures? And, how do they fit on each other? They don't. Okay. They don't. They do and they don't. Right. So sometimes there's overlap and sometimes there isn't, and it's not consistent. And so, who was I talking to? I was talking to somebody the other day about trying to set up shields, and that there were overlapping issues going on, and that at one level they need this kind of shield, and another level they need another kind of shield, and I'm like, okay, but don't think about those two shields at the same time, as your brain will break, right? Because you're gonna be like, well, how do those work? They don't. Okay, it's like you've got this shield here and you've got that shield there, and they don't interrelate. They don't interact, but they both do different things in the same time frame for very different reasons, right? And so you're creating them in a context, right? So they're contextual shields, not ongoing, regular shields, right? So it can get very complex, okay? And the deeper you get into the magic, the more complex it can get. I'm actually working with someone on shifting an entire country's culture, and that's much. I'm not going to say more than that because I don't want to get into it, but it's so good. I mean, the level that we're working on is so amazing, right? And just starting a ripple point. You put a point in you drop a stone in the water and it ripples out, right? And so how do you how do you engineer that? My engineer brain is loving it so much, right? Because I live to like engineer shit. But that's why I married an engineer, right? So, but the nature of the universe is that everything is energy and everything is intention. And Kathy and I were talking about the how that intention relates. And she said that she believes that we are all we all individually hold intentions and that those intentions overlap and that creates physical reality, right? And and I said, well, yes, and I am all those people who are creating that reality as well as being myself. And she's like, yeah, but these people have individual volition. And I said, yes, and I am them. So it, it's both, right? So there's duality and then there's experience level of beingness, right? And in the duality level, I am me and you are you. And in the experience level, we are in union. We are the same being, right? We are all of beingness and not beingness, right? And so that is that dissolved state that we were talking about in Eastern philosophy. And so a lot of times when people first come into this work, the thing that they're looking for is control because they're feeling unsafe, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so the challenge then becomes that they go looking for ways to control and they use the energy to try and control other people, usually in the environment, right? And that is a folly because other people are doing the same thing. And that's when you're clashing because you don't have any control over things that aren't you. And so the key is to step into the space of things that aren't where you are everything. When you are everything, then you step into flow and the need to control disappears. It's not, oh, suddenly I can control everything, right? It's, I don't need to control everything because I am everything and everything is exactly as it's meant to be, right? And it becomes a different journey, right? And you're experiencing that on Walkabout right now.
I am. Like there's been a lot of the interconnectedness of all things, popping up in the most unique ways, as far as like seeing myself and others, like what it was so funny. Like, I'm going to go back to New Orleans again, but as I was sitting, on the balconies eating lunch one day, I was just looking at myself and all of the, like, you got some of the unsavory characters, you got the flamboyant characters, you got the free characters, you got the psychics. And I'm like, wow, I have wore all of these masks down to, like, and I'm like, what a trip to even like, for me, like I still, like I'm just now getting to that layer of the work, the deep philosophical stuff. And it's funny because I had an owl, not an actual owl, but kind of an actual owl, land in my car as I was driving. Where was I? I might have been on my way to see Kathy actually. Not long about, and the owl just, like I was like, oh, I have to do this in order to be, like spiritual. I have to forgive right now. And I have to, and this owl just says who? Says who? And it made me question everything. Like that little interaction with that spirit, owl, that owl spirit that came through. Like this conversation you're having at this level with Kathy about the fabrics of the universe, like that's what's going on with everything for me. Like I've just been questioning everything, and and not saying that I'm not at a great place with a lot of what I've learned, but I'm also like, but what if? Right? And like that sounds like what you're experiencing, and like it's funny when you were talking. I see geometry a lot, right? Like, like I don't do the physics aspect thing, but I see the sacred geometry. I see the, like when I really lose myself, I see things come together in things like, I mean, it's hard to explain, but it's like a kaleidoscope, like the shapes and but that was my way of understanding the fabrics of reality. That's like, like the I am coming online and then awareness spreading. And that's really why I got this tattoo was, of the flower of life, because, like to me, that is that expansion. And that is what created the fabric of this. But there's so many layers within it now. It's like we're discovering something that's undiscoverable. Right? Does that make sense? Like, we just keep going and going and going, and it's beautiful because it's the I am, which we are, expanding into, like, who knows, who knows? I mean, like, that's where my mind goes, and I have to be weary of it while I'm doing certain work because I can really get lost in the existential questions, and Kelly's like, "Just take it easy, like, come back to reality for a little bit." But, I love that this is what you and Kathy just talk about, probably 7 AM.
Yep. Yeah. We do it while we walk and talk. Yep. It's our chit chat.
Yep, I love that. I love that.
I was trying to get your and this will be interesting because I'm going to ask you this question and we're going to go a little long on this episode. And that's okay. That seems to be a theme this morning. But there is an energy. So I was recently rewatching Agatha All Along for the third time. Okay, if you haven't watched it yet, you need to watch it. It is damn fine, and it's really good around the energetics and the magic and stuff. And there's something in the show. Don't sing the song. Don't sing it. It's a very, very cool song. Don't sing it. And but I was rewatching it for the third time, and it was tapping me into this energy. So when I was a kid, mom used to take me to New Age events, and they had a very specific energy to them. And I'm pretty sure I talked about this when I was in Richmond and walked into a New Age event in Richmond that I was like, oh my God, I remember this energy. I'm like 8 years old again, right? And that New Age energy has a very specific energetic to it. And, and this is how Kathy and I got on the subject of religions, because it was like, Wicca has a very specific energy to it. Voodoo has a very specific energy to it. Shamanism has a very specific energy to it. And we were talking about it and I was like, yeah, but Wicca and Voodoo and, any other religion, right, has a very specific energy, but shamanism is a very different energy, even though it is still a spiritual practice. It is still I wouldn't call it a religion because it's not calcified like most religion gets calcified, right? But the difference is in shamanism, you're not handing over your power to somebody you're begging for help from. And in most religions, that is the case, right? You're not empowered. You are subject to a higher power of some kind, right? And in shamanism, you are connecting with the great spirit and with great mystery and with the land and with your ancestors and all the rock people and the tree people and the animals and the spirit animals and the animal people and all of it. But you are not in power. You are of the all, right? And so it's very Eastern philosophy sort of mindset stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not about, oh, I am great and powerful, right? But it is not a disempowered state either. Okay, which is why shamanism appealed to me, because it is not a power over, it is a power with, but I am in myself sovereign, right? And I presume all of the other peoples, those, tree people, plant people, rock people, right, are in their sovereignty as well. And because we are all sovereign, we don't need to control each other. We just need to live in harmony, right? And that's the piece about shamanism that appealed so much to me. And, alchemy, as much as I do it, is one of those things where it is very much seeking to control the outside elements if you're doing the, physical version of it. And if you're doing the spiritual version of it, it's seeking control over yourself, right? Turning lead into gold, right? And so, they have similar paths, right? But not exactly the same outcome, right? And so when we talk about the nature of reality, we're seeking out an understanding of the larger world. And you are stepping into that nonlinear space, right? And the challenge in that nonlinear space is to let go of the need to make it linear,
Mhm.
because that's what we do, right? And to break down the roles, and this is the gift of walkabout, is that you break down the roles that you're holding because you are untethered. I said that in the last episode. You're untethered from the world, right? You're roaming without without any clear purpose except to be, and to be guided, and to be in the flow, right? And so this idea that you had to let go of trying to be spiritual, which I got to tell you guys, that is the biggest trap on the planet. If you're
Oh
trying
shit,
to be
yeah.
spiritual, you are not being spiritual. Let me just say that. So, you better goal would be to try and be yourself, right? Just be authentically who you are. Say what you mean. Don't, sugarcoat stuff. Not to say be mean. I'm not saying be mean. I'm saying be true, be honest, be transparent, right? That is where you become spiritual, is in those spaces of being seen and seeing others for who they are with compassion. And when you do that, you step into a more spiritual space. And, owning your own shit is a big thing. You've got to do that if you want to be on a spiritual path, if you want to be a spiritual person. Owning your shit is the very, very first place you look when something goes wrong is you, right? And then, and only once you've dug deep inside of yourself and determined, no, this shit is not me, that's when you turn outside, right?
And then you realize that's you too.
Well, I'm in freedom. Whole bullshit life of your life. Yeah.
That's so
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah. Which it's just what it is, right?
Yeah.
And so, when we come into this work, we seek to orient to this nonlinear space, but we don't understand what it is. And we want to feel safe within it. So we try to manipulate it. But that doesn't actually make us safe because magic isn't safe. And then, so then we have to turn within at some point if we want to get anywhere. Right. And, you can build a lot of power outside of yourself, but you will still not be happy. And, you'll still be beholden to whoever you're going to for that power. So whatever deity or demon or entity or whatever you went to give you that power, because you don't have access to your inner power because you never did the work to get it. Right. And so, yeah.
That's why we preach the inner work,
Yeah.
That's why we preach the inner work. The magic is in the inner work, like in all of that's why the way in which you teach it is perfect. Like I know you were talking about, from the alchemist perspective, it being more, kind of like on that masculine side, but I would argue that you create a box to teach people how to step out of other boxes.
Yeah.
Like you just realize that the box is just a wet cardboard flap and you can kick it down at any time, but there has to be some structure in that. And it's, like, for me, like before I stepped into this work with you and, to understand the fabrics of the universe, even to this state, like I had to take away all of the outside noise and get directed down some type of fucking path. Because I think that's the madness that a lot of us experience out here, right? Is that there is so much information. With that comes a whole shitload of misinformation. And beyond that, it is all you farming out your power to somebody else, in essence, right? Like, yeah, you're listening to the channel that you've listened to for 2 years. That's great. You resonate with them, but you should not base your life on their experience. Like I'm out here trying to be the main character in my story, not trying. I'm the main character in my story. And that's what we all should be doing, to me. I mean, if you really want to embark on that hero's journey, realize that all of the people that you look up to, you possess that within yourself. So, that's the power you talk about in shamanism. There's, like we help people find that within themselves.
Yeah. Absolutely true. So, the work. So all of those books you have sitting next to your nightstand and next to your chair in the living room, they're half read. Those are all you trying to orient to the nature of the new reality that you're experiencing, right? That's what those are about. And when we step in at that level and we're willing to open our minds to new ideas, not only about the world, but specifically about ourselves. Because I got to tell you, you're not who you think you are. I wasn't, you know? Nobody I know was. We thought we were somebody different. And then we found out through this work that we were somebody completely not the same person that we thought we were, right? And, because that person we think we are is put on us by the roles that we're asked to play, by the belief structures of our parents and our culture and our society, and by all of the experiences that we had that we interpreted in one way and we could reinterpret in other ways to be somebody else, right? So all of this, and that's the beautiful thing about this work is, and I'm really glad I did this work as opposed to therapy, because therapy is about going backwards, right? It's about looking back at what your history was and trying to unwind and unravel it. This work, we only do that work. We only go backwards if it's stopping us from going forwards, right? And then we only do it in the context of what's going forward, right? We're like, oh, this moment is being impacted by that moment back there. So, okay, so let's just release that moment. Let's work with our inner child. Let's, do whatever we need to do to let that go so that this moment moves forward, right? And so, we do, once you get into the shadow work section, we are looking at our patterns, right? We do a lot of pattern work. I don't know if you've started that part of the lessons yet.
Oh, I'm making my trauma sexy now. When you got me into existential kink. I'll talk about that in the meditation episode too. I got a whole process. I got a whole process for that now.
Well, that's the quote of the day. I'm going to make my trauma.
I'm a bad little boy. I wanted to experience that, Kelly.
Oh my God, you're hysterical. I mean, yeah, so we get into that. But it's looking at patterns, right? And so you're looking at your patterns so that you can unravel them if you want, or recognize them if you don't, and all of that. Because there's no good, bad. We choose what we want to experience, and this is what we're here for. Right? So, the key, if I'm going to wrap up the idea of this nature of the universe thing, is we are the universe and the universe is us. I've been saying this forever, but to understand it, it's a simple concept, but it's a profound and deep concept. And the deeper you get into the exploration of that question or that statement, is the deeper you understand it, right? It is wide and deep and profound in its nature. It's like its own Zen cone, right? It's very different. And so when we step into this work, we're seeking the nature of ourselves, and we find the nature of the universe because we are the universe and the universe is us. And so just know that whatever journey you take, you'll be going down both paths at the same time.
Very fitting. I'm listening to Alan Watts' Become Who You Are. So that's a great way to end it.
Yep.
Perfect. As usual.
Right.
The nature of the universe is perfection, even if it doesn't seem like it.
Yes. Everything that's happening to you is happening for you.
Absolutely.
Right? So you got to change that perspective to it's not happening to me, it's happening for me. And you don't know why. Right?
That is one of the biggest shifts you can make that will be the most beneficial. That and gratitude for what is.
Yeah.
If you could get there, do those two things, you're going to see monumental results in a short amount of time.
Absolutely. So with that, I'm going to say, if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend, because this is how we get our message out. This is how people expand and grow. And, my purpose on the planet is to up-level it one person at a time. And so every person you share this with is a way for me to grow that influence and be able to get that message out at a deeper level. So I would appreciate that if you would share it. And we love suggestions. In fact, the meditation episode we were hoping to do, which we've run out of time to do, was actually suggested by a listener, by Elizabeth, and she's given us a long list of episode and suggestions, which we are going to take. And
We
so
promise. We promise, Elizabeth. We got you.
as soon as things stop throwing themselves in our path, because we really want to do them, they were great. And so if you have some episode suggestions, things you'd like to hear about, please let me know. Please don't ask for demonology. I will not be teaching that on the podcast. That is an unsafe thing to teach without supervision. So that will not be one of the things that we teach here. If you want to learn about that, you have to come in and take classes because, that's not something that should be put out on the open air.
No, it is not.
Definitely not. And so, and things like possession, depossession, and things like that. Still too much, right? Can't do it. But yeah, to come ask about the nature of the universe or ask about, a specific practice you want to know more about. I'm happy to talk to you about it. And so with that, we are going to sign off for the day. Please like, subscribe, and share. And remember that what you focus on expands, what you intend is what you create. So choose wisely.